this audible?
You are very audible.
Yeah, so we already got sides. I think Costa Kids will do prop, and yeah, the cranes will do op.
You know what you said?
So we already got sides. Foster Kids will do prop, and cranes will do op.
Wonderful. Just complimentary. Mary, can you be able to time for us? Mary, if Sydney asks, can you help us with the timer?
Yeah, Marisha says she will type, so she let us know how many minutes we're supposed to be using.
No, I'm taking the 8 minutes.
I think we're going to use 8 minutes. Who has a problem with that? If you get wala with that, make una talk. If you have a problem with 8 minutes. Foster Kids, are you okay with 8 minutes?
Yeah, sure, cool.
Alright, the Uganda Queen. Children, are you ready with your 8 minutes?
Yes, Father, we are ready.
Well, cool. Alright. Okay, guys. I've gone beyond our start time. Let me welcome the first speaker from the affirmative to present their case. Just do an introduction so we can go. This is not a final round, so we don't expect shoutouts, but it's also allowed to bring them in. You can start.
Yeah, Raima, if you want 9 minutes, you can always speak to either Jesse or Jibril. They use 7 and they give you the extra minute. That's like still cool. Okay, fine. So let me just track the motion and I would start. POIs might be in the chat, less likely I may take, but yeah, I may take. Cool. So I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Chair, we live in a specific world where a lot of individuals get to suffer from the hardships and things that inherently harm them. I think it stretches to things like economic, say for instance, problems and hardships that are much more likely prompted by systems. Again, we think in the vast majority of instances, we think people live within failed relationships, much more intoxicated by things like life experiences, they less likely cannot grow over. We think at a point in time that individuals likely feel insurmountable amount of things like pain, we think it's much more justified that these individuals get to sell those particular things anyways, those particular emotions that they want to leverage themselves over and again. What do we think this debate is not about? I think this debate is not about whether selling of things like human experiences is definitely a bad or good thing anyways. I think the debate is about whether people can be given an innate choice, definitely to solve the things when they concede to solve them anyways. I think it applies largely to in the vast majority of instances, individuals who likely want to solve these particular sort of emotions. So we can't definitely argue on the complexities of things like, oh, think privacy breaches or things like vulnerability of these individuals, we say much more likely the reason why they want to sell off these particular things is, I think, probably get leverage over like specific human emotions or make a living out of those particular things. I think I'll probably engage within my analysis on vulnerability is less likely going to fly within this specific debate. I think just to be much more clear, our side of the house within the context of this debate is that we refer to the idea where individuals can engage within things like transactions, where they can exchange and monetize their emotional states, or possibly through things like platform services or direct interactions. It means much more likely we're able to commodify things like human experiences in most cases. I think we'll argue why the commodification of safe or commercialization of things like emotions is much more likely important. I think in an attempt to do this on government, we're going to prove three arguments. One, likely on autonomy and personal agency. Secondly, on economic opportunities. And lastly, why we think this is a mechanism for individuals necessarily to emotionally support other individuals. And that is something that intrinsically kind of like want anyways. I think of the first argument here. We say on our side of the house, individual autonomy is much more likely important. We say at a point in time that individuals might have the ability to kind of like make specific things like decisions about their own bodies and things like life, we think this is just in and of itself. We think just as people have the right to definitely decide what kind of profession they likely pursue or how they express themselves artistically, they should definitely have the autonomy to engage within transactions involving their specific emotions. We think why this is crucially very important. And the problem here is that at a point in time that you less likely go against these particular things, in the vast majority of instances, you likely self-incriminate these individuals to live within circumstances that they otherwise could benefit of anyways. The problem with this is that in most cases, you likely have a more porous world where there is like constant jeopardy of other individuals, where there's a direct attempt for individuals to go against specific systems simply because they think those particular majority of instances. But the second thing here is to say, what we say in a certain aspect to allow the sale of those specific emotions where you create economic opportunities. At a point in time that the world is much more stifled by things like economic hardships, we much more likely think this is a viable sort of like a position. We think it exists in a free market system anyways, where people should be necessarily be able to free to capitalize on their unique skills and attributes, including things like emotional intelligence or expression without unnecessary kind of restrictions. We viable sort of market sort of like place where this like huge like amounts necessarily make a living off this particular thing. The problem with the world or the counterfactual you're likely going to propose on opposition is that that world is highly more competitive. It means much more likely only those who have the capacity in terms of like a rich, say for instance, market base are more likely going to be successful within that specific arena. We say emotions in and of themselves are likely more likely unique to these particular individuals. It means they are much more likely going to get a leverage over that particular. That is much more better in terms of how these individuals are likely more going to be kind of like better able like kind of like survive anyways. This is some sort of like comparative analysis on why that particular world on opposition is much more likely better. We don't necessarily think it likely comes out like the one issue. But I think the third thing you have to say is likely on why you're able to get like emotional support of things like service industry in the service industry and of itself. We say again, and this is generally an aspect of morality and why we think it's likely important. We say in most cases, the survival of these individuals within largely this community is largely the objective on how they are viewed within such specific sorts of societies. It means definitely how they get to live in is definitely tied on how they are able to contribute to the build up of such specific sort of structures. It means in most cases, this is more important to them anyways, because at a point in time that they're able to share experiences that they likely still benefit from, and most likely the things have like a positive sort of like impact on those individuals, they like becomes more better. At a point in time that individuals necessarily would benefit on things like say for instance prestige, we think it becomes more better. Opposition case would likely look on a twofold. One, aspects of exploitation concerns and why these are likely going to be. We say at a point in time that you could have things, or you could include things like setting age limits on who is likely trading things like emotions. You much more likely have informed consent existing anyways. You have prohibitions necessarily around transactions under certain circumstances. So even if likely that exploitation concern is likely going to fly within this debate, we think much more likely there are specific mechanisms on how you can cramp down and curtail such specific things at the end of the day. The second push push could be like, oh, I think this necessarily is bad because you get to dehumanize individuals. There is a loss of authenticity about what human life is necessarily and what it ought to look like. We say again, the sale of emotions in and of itself is just seen as an extension of this phenomenon with like kind of like proper education. So it probably doesn't need to lead to a loss of things like authenticity. It could necessarily be more meaningfully used anyways. We say at a point in time that individuals could still say, for instance, trade off particular things within things like big data over media platforms and all that kind of thing. It's still much more likely possible. And the last thing here would be on the impact on personal relationships and why that's likely going to be bad. We say at a point in time that there would be some sort of like responsible and ethical engagement at the end of the day in terms of how individuals are likely going to do this. We don't necessarily think this is likely going to replace any kind of like genuine personal relationships at the end of the day. We think people could engage within various professions that involve emotional labor, such as probably counselors or things like therapists, without necessarily undermining those personal connections at the end of the day. Why therefore do we think the impacts on our side of the house are much more likely going to exist anyways? We say again, in most cases, there's already an active trend within status quo that necessarily preaches for things like individual autonomy anyways. We think in kind of like many societies, there's already a growing emphasis on individual autonomy and personal freedom. We think the motion necessarily highlights why, if this is likely implemented within the right legal framework, individuals could necessarily willingly engage within selling things like emotions with informed concept of specific things like consequences, and much more likely this could be beneficial to them at the end of the day. But at a point in time that you could guarantee things like economic freedom, we say this is likely more important anyways, because within such a system, you could provide these individuals with opportunities to kind of monetize their specific emotional labor, things that don't exist within kind of like status quo. Our attempt on our side is quite simple, is that you get specific mechanisms in terms of providing already things within status quo that are already served to be a problem. Things like unemployment. You cramp down on things like high criminality. These individuals, say for instance, networks anyways, but also much more likely things that could necessarily put specific societies in things like tension anyway, simply because particular areas are inherently inaccessible because of things like ghettos created by these individuals within that specific context. We say likely the aspect on emotional support is also much more likely because the likelihood of emergence of legitimate emotional support services industry depends on the demand for such services. We say within these current times where you get like high criminality, or say for instance individuals are likely necessarily committing things like suicide, you provide that scheme where individuals can share experiences anyways and necessarily motivate other individuals. Our push on our side is quite simple, and this is just generally from proposition, that you get individuals necessarily doing these particular things. They benefit from them, and other individuals within that specific context also necessarily benefit from these particular things. We proud to argue on proposition. Here.
Right. Rin, if you can hear me, kindly be looking at your text spaces. This is for every speaker who is going to be making a speech. Look at the text space where you do break. I'll be able to unmute. But either way, look at your text spaces. We thank the speaker for that fine speech. We welcome the next speaker. Here.
Hey, am I clear?
You are crystal clear, madam.
Okay, so I'll be taking my PIs after the 5th minute. Please don't budge before that. Secondly, I'm going to be looking at my timer. So if anyone has a problem with my audibility or whatnot, please unmute. I can't see the text space from where I am. Is that okay? Hey, am I still audible? I don't know.
Very audible, and it's wonderful.
Okay.
You can see.
Okay, let me just set my notes. Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Emotions are personal and intrinsic experiences. This essentially means that they are deeply important and subjective to the identity of each and every individual. We think that at a point in time that this is true, selling then becomes intrinsically wrong. We object to this motion. two burdens on our side of the house. Firstly, to show why this is unjustified, and secondly, to show why the harms are then more to the society than any benefits that you could necessarily get. 3 points of setup before I go on to our response as a side proposition. Firstly, we think that emotions are far more than what we actually get from side proposition. Emotions are what individuals feel. These are people's identity. This is what makes an individual that particular individual. So at that particular instance, this debate then becomes an assessment of the ethical and moral virtues that we then necessarily get when we trade off people's identity to actually monetary gains. Secondly, we tell you that these emotions then are the
Speaker.
reasons why
Hello.
individuals then yes, please. Yes, please.
Hello.
Hi, am I audible?
We lost you for a split. Speech again.
It's better now.
Area, start your speech. It would just be better because it was really crazy. Just restart your speech and we can start. Mary, if you can, just you can also start restarting your timer. Whenever you're ready, madam, we'll be waiting.
Okay. I'm going to start in 3, 1. Says this essentially means that they are deeply important and subjective to the identity of each and every individual. We think that at a point in time where this is true, selling then becomes intrinsically wrong. Two burdens on our side of the house. Firstly, we're going to prove to you why it's principally unjustified to sell these emotions, but also secondly, why the harms outweigh the benefits. Points of setup before I go on to our responses to side proposals. Yes, please.
It's very clear for me.
Well, if
Let me
if it's
try
nice,
getting
now am I going to give you
another
adjudication, eh?
clip.
All right, just give me a second. Let me reconnect something. So you should
Okay,
also
let me
reconnect
just
on your end. Let's just try and reconnect again.
yes, please. Let me just reconnect.
It is you.
All right, let me see. Am I audible?
If you connect audible, it will work.
Yeah. Hello. Oh God.
Yes, you're audible.
Wonderful. Let me, Rahim, if you could just start your speech. Let me track something down. Don't worry, this Wi-Fi. Yeah, Rahim, if you could start your speech, I'd be really grateful.
Perfect.
Hi, is it better now? Hello.
Yes, you are loud and clear. You can start. I don't know if I'm audible to you, because just.
Yes,
Yes.
I can clearly hear you.
All right, cool. You can start your speech. You are audible on this side. I hope she's audible to each and every one of you. So just put it in the text space.
If I'm not audible, please put it in the text space. Okay, since I'm clear, let me just reset my timer so that I can begin my speech again. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Emotions are personal and intrinsic experiences. This essentially means that they are deeply important and subjective to the identity of each and every individual. We think at a point in time where this is true, selling then becomes intrinsically wrong. Two burdens on our side of the house. Firstly, to prove to you why it's principally unjustified to sell these emotions, but also number of people within the society. 3 points of setup before I move on to our responses within this debate. Firstly, we think emotions are far more than what individuals feel within society. We think that emotions are people's identity. We think that emotions are what make each and every individual that person in the vast majority of instances. But also, secondly, we think that emotions then move on to be the reason why you do certain things within your lives. It is the reason why you carry out certain things, the reason why you marry certain individuals within your lives, or the reasons why you take up certain jobs within your life. This is all because of your emotions. At a point in time where this is then true, we think this debate then becomes an assessment of whether it's true to trade off or whether it's good to trade off individuals' personality and individuals' identity for the benefit of money or for the benefit of other individuals. Secondly, we think that selling off emotions then inherently doesn't only mean you taking them and giving them to other individuals. We think that the most valuable emotions are then sold at the highest price within status quo. This essentially means that you then monetize people's emotions and you then monetize people's feelings. Two arguments then within my speech today. Firstly, on how it degrades people's identity, and secondly, how when you monetize emotions, it then becomes something that is unjustified within society. But before that, a few responses to Rin's speech. The first argument that we get from him is on how individuals then have an inherent right to choose what they want to do with life, and selling emotions is basically what they want. Four responses to this. Firstly, we think this is something that is contradictory to their case. Why? In Green's first statement, he says that this debate isn't about moral ethics. This then essentially means that this debate then doesn't become about choice. So at a point in time where their case is contradictory, had them them, which is how they feel, or which is how they necessarily react to different situations. The harm of this is firstly on the seller, right? Firstly, we think that a person can then never truly actualize because they do not have what makes them. And at a point in time where you then cannot actualize, you then do not fulfill what then is supposed to make you human. You're then as worthless as a slave at that particular instance because you're then stripped of your whole dignity. But also, secondly, right, we feel like you then degrade those individuals' dignity because you strip them of what makes them them, which then means they then have no identity in society because they are given their identity. But also, finally, individuals then never feel what makes them, which then takes away some part of them, which is something that is harmful. I won't take you. Sadly, we think that it is harmful on the buyer because, firstly, these buyers never then actualize because these buyers are always buying emotions of other individuals, right? They only embody other individuals within society, but they never embody what they would actually feel within the society. The harm of this is that you then don't give them this sort of dignity that they would have wanted within society. But also, secondly, the fact that these emotions are then based on someone else's ways of thinking, it then means that these buyers within society are then uh, never going to truly feel themselves within society. The importance of this argument is twofold. Firstly, this argument is not contingent on any practical outcomes. This necessarily means that this argument still exists if any side proposition comes and shows you the benefits of selling emotions. But also, secondly, it shows you why it then goes against the morals that our society is then built on, which is something that is then harmful in society. Jubilee is going to come and handle the argument on how it then monetizes emotions and why that is something that is inherently wrong. I rest my case by saying that side proposition has to then come and justify to us why it is something that is good to trade off people's identity and to degrade individuals to the point where they are slaves for the monetary gain of a like rich who can then necessarily buy emotions at and then become
Right. We thank the speaker for that wonderful speech. We welcome the next speaker of affirmative.
Yes. Am I audible?
You are louder.
Alright. Wise, the chat space. I think I'll be able to see notifications, so I'll go there. But let me first catch my breath. Okay. So presuming I'm still audible, I'm just going to start my speech in 1, 2, 3. The essential case from people. Sorry, let me restart. Okay. So I'll start in 3, 2, 1. The essential house position is to say that this is something that naturally belongs to humans and therefore it should never be traded. This is where we are going to win on our choice argument. Chair, there is no greater happiness in the world than knowing that the only thing that has now gained economic value is something you naturally produce and simulate for others to sell. Not because you necessarily go ahead and have to study to simulate an emotion to sell it and have to do all this little bad work to produce a good, but because that thing fundamentally and principally belongs to you. We said there is no greater appreciation of human dignity than that specific right to sell something that belongs to you from birth and that belongs to your own intellect of you simulating emotions. This is where they are losing the debate. Because if you do not appreciate that in the first place, we said this is principal enslavement in of itself, because it denies individuals to sell something that naturally belongs to them, not their governments, not because they have gone to school and accumulated knowledge, but things of the like. I think that should be enough rebuttal. But even if it's not enough, let's just go to the next case. We say we have sold our identities over time for good. And there are two reasons in which this happens. The first is to say we always welcome individuals within our countries to sell them our culture, to sell them our expressions, to sell them our language and greetings. This has been consistently, principally true because of two specific reasons. The first is that it attaches value to that specific culture in of itself. That is what we want in this debate. We have lived in a world where there is no literal economic value to some sort of emotion that someone can feasibly express. We said this is a world in which you are okay, cool.
Rahim,
Yes, please.
can you give me a second to reconnect? I don't know if it's me who is not hearing you clearly, but you've been breaking on my side. Just give me a second to reconnect. I will. Uh, God.
All right, no, hala.
Right, Rahim, am I audible to you?
Yes, please.
Right, continue your speech. Let me see where I left you. Ah, yeah, you were analyzing or mechanizing the idea of identities already exist and people sell them on a regular basis. So that's where your analysis was on my side. So if you can continue from there, it'll be grand. It'll be grand.
Okay, so I'll continue in one, two, three. Yeah, the problem with status quo is people are continuously selling their identities, right? But that has never been given like fundamentally an economic value to that specific aspect. And I'll explain why this is bad. Because within status quo, we care so much about the output or outcome of an emotion than rather an emotion itself. We said that only people are the only reason as to why people care about you being sad is because you're going to commit suicide in the first place. We said this is very wrong because when they are creating deterrent mechanisms, they don't create mechanisms for sadness. They create deterrent mechanisms that specific of being suicide. We said this is wrong because you get to experience that bad emotion in the first place, yet government literally has the ability to sell off that specific emotion or to buy it from you so that you don't get to experience it and have the worst idea. This is why we essentially say that on the left side of the house, you get economic value that now appraises emotions in the first place, unlike status quo. Let me just go into the extensions. The first extension we have is explaining commodification and why it's literally good and how it supports humanity as a whole project to get better. The first thing to say here is that we have already appreciated some level of human intellect, but within time, this has only been applying to logic. This is why you appreciate when someone is creative, innovative, motivates you, or essentially makes you happy as a comedian, right? But this in of itself has always been called good. The problem we have within status quo is that then you cannot have the best system to decide how to make choice. The reasons why most businesses are successful is because they have business models that kind of explain how almost their customers are going to work. They only do that on a logical value. There's an exclusive impact you create on our side of the house if business models, but also other models that influence how people are going to like act or actually act in the first place, or their actions are also able to draw in emotion into the equation. that very exclusive impact you get on our side is that you get contribution towards projects like that. AI models that not only simulate logic, but are also able to simulate emotions and help governments guide how to make the best decisions, what probably decision is going to maximize the best happiness for people. The reason why you don't get a better approximating status quo is because we only rely on soil data that we call logic in of itself, and we assume that people will think logically. You get an exclusive kind of benefit on our side if you're able to pay people to come ahead and help you with that project by providing you that emotional experience of theirs, so that AI model in of itself is something that is able to simulate that. Why is this good on principle? I'm going to show two principal fronts. The first is utilitarian. If literally now governments can actually simulate how individuals are going to be happy and what makes them best happy, it basically shows that you spare a lot of resources and guide them effectively. This is the best choice you can get from this side of the house. The second thing to say is that you're able to create utility for almost every individual, given you know how their emotional appeal is on that specific front. Secondly, on deontology, we said that you're able to also principally allow people who want to contribute to the overall human project. It is your duty as a human being to contribute to that project. The only reason as to why you will be able to contribute to the project of betterness of humanity through innovation and creativity and all those things, if you're able to trade off certain things and then give them to other people to make humanity better, we say you're solely responsible for that specific action, and that is why it's essentially better for the human project. Notice that these principles explain two things. We have overall impact, but we also have like a progression within society where we are able to make best decisions to influence how people are going to be happy. It means still we are able to cut and not make in the first place, because we don't depend on the outcome, but we rather simulate what happens within people's happiness or badness in the very key respect. Chair, the thing to say here is that clarification. Sorry. Okay, let me take you.
Do you think individuals will buy bad emotions at that instance?
Yes, and this is where it becomes exclusively good to simulate a lot of things within society. You say an actor who wants to know how to act like a bad character will necessarily buy that emotion so that they play their role. And the second problem that we present in this debate is that you can have the best emotional prowess. You can have the ability to simulate emotions within your brain, but you don't have the physical capacity to do so. This is why a lot of people like people who want to be actors but are disabled and the like and don't have the physical looks that make them look attractive to play roles always lose out on this emotional that they are principally right to start to them who has the ability to do so, them their physicality can't allow them to. This is still exclusive benefit, because if you don't allow people to sell their emotions, you essentially ban actually using their own emotional intellect towards achieving something within society. The other thing to see the commodification of something, because we know there is an economic value towards something, it's most of the time glorified, but also it means there should be quality improvement. So people care about their emotional intelligence, people care about their emotional understanding in the first place. You prompt them to emotionally act better given that specific emotional kind of money that is attached to it, the economic. Why this is gets good 5 seconds. Not like this, it gets good, because you still get progression that is unique on our side. There's no reason as I would care about my sadness if there is economic value to it. You get.
I think the speaker, that wonderful speech. Welcome the next speaker. Two. Giliran away. Uganda Cranes. Hey. Speaker don't run.
He's around. He's trying to speak.
Okay. Second position speaker, what seems to be the issue now?
I think Jibril can like reconnect. Then he'll probably be able to hear us.
Yeah, the best solution because time don't run. Or Jessica can iron if things refuse.
Oh, Jibril is here to give a groundbreaking speech, please.
Yeah, we can't hear him. Jibril, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you, sir.
Maybe Jesse does second, then Jibril can do third.
Oh, Jesse is scared of going second. Jesse, what's your take on it, sir?
Jibril is joining. I don't know. Jibril is going to come and do second. Let's give him a second.
All right, let's give him a few seconds. Jibril, if you can hear us, we are waiting on you. Hi.
Jibril, you can now try to explain. Unmute. Mute.
I think it's really a general issue, and that might require either restarting the gadget or switching gadget. It might be voice on the phone itself. So, yeah, maybe then Jesse can do second, then Jibril does third as he resolves that.
All right. I think that would be the best because time is running.
And the man them switch devices. They want to hear his second speech.
Ogami and no get time. Food you they tell us say we wait for this guy change device. Cha. Wait, just say, guy, we're giving your guy 1 minute. If he cannot come, we might have to continue the speech.
Jibril, can you try getting off the call and you join again?
Okay, he's coming.
Round is getting
He has gone
dragged.
off, so he's now reconnecting.
Jesse, you can do second.
All right, Jibril, between Jibril and Rahima, one of you has to do second speech. We are really time bad.
Could we
Let me
just
call
have
Coach to the second speech.
Even if you called Bo, Just tell him to switch devices.
Could we call James to do second speech?
Can you do what now?
Call
Call
our question.
James to give second.
Nah. Wait. Where is he? Is he around?
He's
Yes,
around.
he's here.
It is okay. You can call whoever you want. James can join and does
But
second
just
speech.
let him raise his hand so I can let him in as fast as possible so we can start our speech.
Okay.
Hi, is my network much better?
Speak.
Just hold on. I can't hear you guys. Let me pick earphones because I want to be able to check like your eyes. Oh no, I think I can hear you now. Is this much better?
Yeah. We can hear you, bro.
Right.
Ah,
Okuku, if you can hear me, you are very audible. We just need you to start. We need to go.
yeah. I'm so sad Jibril can't give his speech. The thing is, I don't have a timer, and so just let me just try to get an external timer. Okay. Can you guys hear me? One more time.
My guy, you are loud and clear. I'm gonna start.
All right, I'm gonna start the speech in 3, 2, 1. Go. Panel. I think second speaker from Prop is unrealistic. I don't think you can base your case on utilitarianism and then claim that individuals will pick bad emotions. Utilitarianism, in of itself, means that you maximize benefit. This is why when Jeremy Bentham came up with the principle, he said that the masters of individuals are pain and pleasure, meaning that you often ought to maximize pleasure over pain. This means that proposition had to defend a world where individuals will often pick good emotions over bad emotions. That is why I think it was really smart for Reimer to think of that characterization in Fast Speech, where she explains that individuals, where she explained the utilitarianism principle of explaining as to how individuals will often pick good emotions. This meant that there was a burden unto second probe to explain why even in those instances you don't get individuals monopolizing good emotions. That is why when second speaker claims that, oh hey, yeah, people will pick all these bad emotions and good emotions, I think it's an absolutely a lie. And this is the thing. I don't think there's anything Henry can do in third speech to save their case, because I think at the point at which they accept utilitarianism, they ought to have defended that specific world. But secondly, I think what's on their world is that their world is extremely harmful. And this is, I think, the second idea that Jib will explain, which I'm trying to piece together in my mind. So I think the idea they say is based on the sort of monopoly that you create, specifically by the individuals who then specifically by the monopoly. Because understand, in order for you to buy stuff, you need money. And the thing is that there is a concentration of individuals who have money to buy good emotions. Why? Not this, that people at the bottom, even at the point at which they're able to sell their emotions, will not be able to make enough money to break the cycle of poverty. Why? Individuals with money are capitalistic in nature, and the way they maintain their capitalism is by maintaining resources in their specific sectors and in their specific groups. This means that even at the best case, you don't create opportunities for individuals, but you continuously perpetuate the cycle of violence. Understand, their world is harmful. Why? In the current world, individuals give their employment. They slave over their employment and time to make money, but they don't even go anywhere. World creates a specific gap and a specific new sector for individuals not only to sell their labor, but also sell their good emotions in those specific instances. Why is this important? It means that the analysis that Rema gives you
Yeah.
specifically on identity is extremely important. It means that in their world, individuals slave more and become more unhappy because they don't have those specific instances. But secondly, I just want to give a brief mechanism on what Rema says. I think Rema explains why identity is. I think she explains it well. I think the missing mechanism here is that you need to understand how individuals' identity ties into them. Understand, your emotions are a cultivation of your personal growth and your personal growth. So the moment you come from hardship, so human beings are like an arc, you come from hardships to the top.
Yeah.
Understand, cultivation, the emotions are a cultivation of how you grow. Meaning, in those specific instances, individuals buying emotions mean that they replace that specific factor. So when second and first speaker come here and claim how individuals will specifically take them, it's impossible. Because secondly, understand, and I think second speaker strawmans us. He says that we're saying that people won't sell. No, understand. Government has the fear to presume that we can sell emotions, but not how individuals react to those emotions. And our case is basically about how individuals react to those specific emotions. I'll take the POI. Hey,
Okay, so why don't you prefer a world where people don't have to smoke or go on drugs to feel ecstasy? Why don't they have to just buy?
I don't think that POI is really important because I think smoking is addictive. I don't think emotions are addictive because if they were addictive, people will be addicted to their bad emotions even when they get into breakups because people don't really have money. So that POI is useless. Henry, ask your POI.
Okay, so my question is, since people always use their bodies to sing, dance, or even sell their bodies to get money, why can't people do that with their emotions?
See, Henry, on side up, we don't agree with all that. We think that even in the current world, human beings living and selling their identity is extremely harmful. This is why you have things like imposter syndrome. This is why people suffer from mental health because the current system we're in is broken. So even the current system, we say we don't like it. So what else do you have? So understand, we think that even with their POIs, we don't agree with the current system. We think it's a broken system. I think, wait, I have 4 minutes. So what I wanted to say is this. Specifically, I think I wanted to add a mechanism on what Ramba had said. So this is what I want to explain. See, and it's the idea about self-actualization being a cultivation of the exclusive individual experiences. Not this. If you inherit someone else's emotion, it becomes extremely difficult for you to express yourself or self-actualize because self-actualization is based on individual emotions. Meaning, at the point that you buy emotions, you are buying someone else's cultivation. But secondly, is this idea I want to explain, the second idea that Rema said will extend on. Pano, in their world, you standardize emotions, meaning there is a specific set of emotions individuals want. So, for example, when you're buying bags, you buy Gucci because Gucci is now the standard. You buy Louis Vuitton because it's now the standard. Their world is harmful because you standardize emotions. This means that Rin's argument on specifically how you give people opportunities doesn't happen. Why? The people who get the opportunities are only the people who have the ability or who have that standardized type of emotion. This has two impacts. It means that one, there are no opportunities created and you create a monopoly of concentration of those emotions in individuals who have money, but who can also have those feelings. But secondly, on top of the struggle of making it in life, you add individuals a secondary struggle of trying to achieve specific emotions that they may never feel. Because the emotion about you going on vacation to a different country, and that's happiness, is different from the emotion of seeing a loved one survive a specific disease. Meaning there are two different emotions. So, Pano, I have 6 minutes, but I think I'm done. I think essentially my speech does a couple of three things. I think one proves the specific burden that Reimer imposed on them, that is a justified burden, because the principle, the burden we imposed on them is based on utilitarianism, as how individuals always maximize pleasure over pain. Second speaker, like he accepts utilitarianism and he again contradicts himself by saying people pick bad emotions. It's a lie because Jeremy Bentham said we maximize pleasure over pain. And it's important in this way. I think one, they lose out because they're unable to explain specifically, why even in those instances that monopoly isn't bad. Because we already consider that monopolies are bad in of itself, even when we're dealing with things like economics. So the way up here, and I'll even do the way up in the second speech, I think the way up here is that they lose out on that because they're unable to justify why, even in those instances where people will often pick good emotions, it's a monopoly that we can live with. But I think secondly, it's important. I think the analysis Grandma gives is extremely important. I think she gives an analysis as to how identities are intertwined to emotions and You can't self-actualize if you don't experience your own emotions, because self-actualization is a cultivation of your own emotions and when you experience them. I think the second thing I give you here is the standardization, which becomes harmful because not everyone can express the happiness or the emotion of going to a different country and enjoying. Speaker, at the end of the day, you need to realize this, that side prop picks a principle they don't understand, and that principle loses them. The principle they take of maximizing the benefits. Our side is much better because we show you the harms in their world. Proud to be on op.
All right. We thank that speaker for that speech. Welcome the third speaker.
All right. Jesus Christ. So, if you have a POI, my eyes are on the chat. So you put yourself on the chat and I'll see you. Don't at any point unmute. It's very agitating. So since OP has 4 speakers, we shall address all the 4 speakers inherently. Okay, so I'm going to start my, yeah?
First, wait, let me reconnect. I think my device is glitching.
All right. Take your time.
All right. Before you begin your speech, am I audible? All right.
Audible.
You from my end. That's where my issue is now.
I think I have green bars. Shit, I have green bars and like red bars, but I want to know if I'm audible. Am I
You are
audible?
now. Yeah, Henry, you are audible. I'm just trying to see.
Okay.
Cool. Henry, you can start.
Okay, so I'm going to, if you have a POI, like I said, just move in the chat and I'll see it. I also do too much.
Henry,
Yeah.
I
Yes,
think
please.
the problem is my side. Like you're breaking too much, and I'm barely getting you. Let me
Nice audible.
reconnect.
God.
No, he
Connect.
said the problem.
Man, I want to grill these guys.
I think it's audible. You are audible.
Henry,
I hope
just a
so.
reminder, equity can't make equity violations, so please.
I won't make any. I try not to
All right.
make any.
Hope this spot
My
is good. Can I hear you? I'm on 5G now. Let's continue. You can start.
Am I audible?
I'm very audible.
Okay, so I'm going to start my timer. Okay, like again I said, one more time, POI is in the chat. Do not unmute at any point. Okay. So I'm going to be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Go. Opposition side was largely very good at banter. I think let's give you the content. So one problem with side is that they forget the inherent burden of this motion. This motion is not an evaluation of whether setting your emotions is good or bad, but I think opposition disregards the frame it gives you. First speaker from programming and shows that this debate is about individuals that are willing and want to trade off. That means people who have gone through numerous emotional breakdowns and who have gone through of hardships that exist as of now, still up to now, failed to give solutions to. At that point, should people be allowed to like sell their emotions or not sell their emotions? This debate is about why individuals probably have that choice or not. The fact that you said it's bad doesn't explain why people shouldn't have that choice to make that decision, let alone explain why people's decision is best fulfilled by pursuing ops work. The fact that OPSI doesn't give any comparative in this regard kicks them out of the debate to begin with. I think because this debate wasn't like very like a clash. Let's start with opposition. Opposition's main aspect of identity. I think James Stroman's My POI. The POI was very simple. If people can like sing, dance, and get money out of it, why can people sell their emotions? Here was very simple, and Rin gives you 2 layers as to why this principle should be upheld. The problem with this is that they never understood Rin's like complex analysis towards this. I think the 2 things that Rin tells is that Rin tells you that at a point where people are able to use their body to be able to achieve something, people use all their voices to be able to get something, at a point where dancers go on streets and get money for that, we believe at a point in time for people who can't sing and dance, good at expressing their emotions, on principle, this individual that opportunity and that choice to be able to commodify their aspects of their emotions and expressions, if like or or not. That principle is non-contingent, as Reimer concedes to you. We argue that at a point in time that in of itself is something that people can feel they should trade off. We believe that that is principally okay. But let us assume that Reimer's speech is actually right? Let us assume Reimer is right. The problem with Reimer's speech is that if you're going to stand, and this is the thing, if you're going to buy the logic that it is okay for musicians to make their own music, commodify it in that particular way as a way of expressing their identity, then you have to buy the logic from proposition that people being able to express their identity through emotions and through the expression and what they feel is justified in of itself. Because at that particular point in time, you are using the same premise for the same analysis. You can't simply neglect one the other. You can't have your cake and eat it. Proposition is out in that particular regard. But let's go deeper in this case, right? They come and talk about individuals selling their emotions. I think if you're going to entrust state to be able to do this, state has already failed these individuals. We already explained why state in framing to begin with, why this problem and bad to begin with, where individuals and state has failed them to give the proper health care and leave exploitative mechanisms by individuals to put people through suffering. We say that because it has failed to probably do that, state should probably give people a choice to find escapism and ways for themselves. We at least create people for a system to be able to do that thing and escape out. We don't say that because we give people a choice to now sell their emotions that everybody is going to sell them. That is the assumption from opposition, and that is not true. Let them not lie to you. We said that at a point in time for people who want to do this, do it. There's no justification for that anywhere there. Again, I think something that is particularly very important in this particular regard. They say that people are slaves. Reimer never analyzes why people are degraded to a slave level at that particular regard. But I think if you're going to buy Reimer's principle on identity, you then need to understand that buyers never self-actualize on their side. Why is it true? Because at the end of the day, the expression is limited. In their world, people's expression is limited because there's no commodification. That means people can misuse and like nudge you for any way they feel like. All because it is commodified, it has a particular value. So you can express it and self-actualize. In their world, it has no people can treat it if they feel like. You then never get the self-actualization. Jib, we went in the debate to begin with, relax. So I think in that particular regard, get the benefits that they probably get. Now let us take away the most important thing that they are trying on in this debate. They said that Reimer is very smart to probably give this framing and push the burden to express why you get utility from bad experiences. I'm gonna give you 4 things here in response, right? 1, I'm going to give you the 4 mechanisms, the 4 ways in which you can probably achieve this kind of expression in that particular regard. Notice, state can probably buy these emotions, like Rahim tells you, to compensate for the harms that people are experiencing. 2, non-government organizations can always buy these bad emotions to be able to show the need for people to effectively express themselves, and the need for people to probably self-actualize, and the need for probably to have that sort of advocacy. 3, social justice movements always do this in of itself to be able to sell their idea, to make sure that people in of themselves notice why things are bad and to also call for systematic change. We say that you can still have utility from that at the end of the day. We say that at the end of the day, if the buyer wants it, they're gonna buy it, and there's big market. There's so many movements that want to do it that particular bad. So the argument is out at this particular base because there are people who are going to buy and achieve utility from the bad experiences. What that analysis does at the end of the day is that it nullifies everything James and Reimer tell you about how you then don't get that kind of utility. James.
If everyone buys all the good
emotion, what then happens? Because good emotions aren't unlimited because of the situation the capitalistic society puts individuals in.
James, you're not understanding this. I think the problem you're not getting here, bro, is this: is that people and organizations cannot become effective by showing people who are happy. They need to get money to accept videos when they show pictures of people suffering. That means that they buy people or emotions of people who are suffering, who are experiencing pain. That's what you've been trying to tell you from the speech. The problem, I think, again, why OP is out in this particular debate again, is to express to you they never justify. They say people are generally, I think, in that. Why do opposition lose out on aware? I think first on the burden on the motion that I already explained. But then most importantly is that we already explain people who go through constant oppression. The fact that they have no way out to find a way to probably get to emotions. Rahim gives you structural analysis, relax, gives you structural analysis. I think Rahim gives you structural analysis as to why at the day you find people who experience a lot of problems who commit suicide because of that process. We say that you eradicate that process and you make it better. But the reason why ours is better the other side, because people are going to buy your emotions, they is that they never get any structural analysis from their side, why people are then not going to probably be able to do this. I think the problem with their side is two things. Start with Rima, even if you're not going to value analysis. Let's value the structural things. Rima gives you analysis but never explains why theirs is exclusive. They tell you standardize emotions, never explain why this is bad to begin with. Rima mechanizes but never impacts this argument and never gives you a comparative as to why the trade is better on their end. Rahim explains to you why the trade is particularly better on our side. James is the worst at this because he gives you economics but never argues people should not be having that choice. I think the principle here is for choice. The fact that you don't give any analysis to why people shouldn't have that choice means that you don't actually do anything in that debate. The only thing that OP does is to give you reasons why this is bad. But that's not the debate. The debate is to explain in of itself why in of itself intrinsically you should have that choice for people to be able to express themselves. Because OP doesn't be able to probably express and change the structural harms that exist in this particular world. We argue that you then get to at least have a world where one, government has to be able to get redress and has incentive to do this, but two, where people can be able to get rid of their bad emotions and not commit suicide and do a lot of bad things in society. We argue that OP is bad because they are good at mechanization but are very bad at emotional interpretation and engagement. Thank you.
We thank that speaker for that speech. We welcome the next speaker here.
Am I audible? Can someone tell me if I'm audible? Oh yeah, okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, let me set my time. Okay, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. So I think in this debate tonight, Prop debates a lot of economics and autonomy. What Prop doesn't understand is that emotions are the intrinsic thing to human experience, representing the very existence of our humanity. We don't go with a side that's selfish, and that's why we're proud to oppose. Before I go into my rebuttal on Clashwing, I think there are just 3 things I need to clear out. I think the first thing is how important Rima's whole thing on mechanization of the utilitarian issue is. I think what this whole thing is based upon, what this whole debate is based upon, is what gives humans the most pleasure, is what they will always take. And this is really explained in James' speech. What that means is that 95% of the times, humans are inherently going to take what makes them happy, which is pleasure. What that means, and James has explained it to us a certain extent, is that at a point in time when you are only buying happiness, remember happiness is not in abundance. It is something which is limited and only a few people get. What that means is that the fact that we live in a monopolistic and capitalistic society, only a few people who can afford happiness will get it. At that point in time, it means only there will be a class in society where only a few people get the happiness, and most of the people are not able to afford this kind of happiness. The second thing that I want to talk about is what this basically emotions and identity thing is, because I think this was a huge thing. I think the whole issue of self-actualization is contingent on whether you are happy or not, or on whether you have specific emotions of your own or not. For example, you self-actualize when you have specific emotions to yourself, when you know that you're going through a hardship and perfectly got out of a certain hardship. At a point in time when you sell a specific emotion of what you have gone through in life, it means that you are losing a part of you. What that means is that you are never going to self-actualize, because on their side what happens is that people no longer have that part of them which they so much cherish because of the experiences that they have gone through. Why that becomes harmful from their side of the house is that at a point in time, one, people lose the very essence of their being and being a human. But secondly, on their side, people are most likely not to be integrated, and there's not going to be kind of that division in society whereby very few people are happy and the rest are going through that kind of psycho depression, that kind of inherent generational, like that inherent generational feeling of unhappiness because they keep selling their emotions. I'll go into a little bit of rebuttal. There are two things that prop brain, that two sensible things that prop to this debate. Firstly, is about the issue of autonomy, but the second issue is about the whole thing of economic opportunities. First and foremost, on the issue of autonomy, I think this thing was already self-contradictory right from first prop speech. But I think this thing was based on two premises. One, Rin assumed that happiness is in abundance, but he also assumed that it can be availed cheaply. There are two simple things that take down the whole issue of autonomy. Firstly, is the issue of monopoly. What does Rin's whole case mean? It means that people who still won't have the choice to choose these specific emotions because of their situations, which means even though we accept that we should value autonomy, still people will not have that choice. Why? Because it's contingent on the fact that the highest bidder takes it. What that means is that this choice is only limited to a few people who are able to buy this whole issue of happiness. Remember the whole issue of utilitarian principle. What that means is that your autonomy is limited to only a small group of people who are able to afford this whole thing of buying the emotions. But the secondly is about the issue of enslavement. The little happiness which you get is later taken away, especially these people who are feeling this unhappiness, all these poor people. Why this is true is because the little happiness, because of your inability to afford or sustain a lifestyle, that little happiness you get is always taken away. I'll take
Jesse.
you in my minute. The little happiness, yes, please. Is it a POI? It's about breaking.
POI.
I'll take you in my 6 minutes. Thank you. The second thing I want to talk about is the whole issue of economic opportunities. First and foremost, on the issue of monopoly, you must know that money is controlled by the rich people. Poor people cannot access your kind of things because they are using the money, the little money they get to survive. Because they cannot get enough of these things, it most likely means that any small emotions that they get from their side, good emotions, are either going to be sold. And even at the point in time when they want to buy them, they still do not have enough money, or they'll still buy and still sell in the long run because they are trying to get out of that whole issue of psychological or generational kind of poverty. There are two clashes that happen in this debate today. Firstly, is the issue of identity versus autonomy, and the second issue is of utilitarianism. I'm going to weigh the first thing of utilitarianism because I think this is what wins the debate. Why is as kind of I think that at a point when people want my pleasure, you're most likely or less likely to take that whole issue of bad things. Why then does my initial things now matter in this debate? Because at a point in time, was likely to take pleasure over pain. It means that at a point in time when pleasure is taken by a small majority of people, it means the whole utilitarian aspect is not one on prop side, because most people are not benefiting from your kind of thing of selling emotions and gaining happiness emotions. What that means is that on a utilitarian level, this thing is won by op for two reasons. One, because we show you on your side that that very few people are actually going to take up this kind of happiness because it's engraved on the rich people. But secondly, we show you because of the issue of monopoly, the whole problem with your side is that very few people are going to access this thing. I'll take your PY.
When goods are scarce, governments and producers finance the production of that good. The sole goal of governments and probably producers is now to make people happier so that they sell emotions. Why?
The issue they're about them producing. First of all, emotions are not manufactured this way. I don't think you can economic debate to this kind of debate to emotion. They're attacking is that the issue is even though you manufacture more emotions, all these emotions of happiness, of people, a classified group of people, this kind of the more things you manufacture because we see you are having those happiness emotions because only a few people are going to get those emotions. I think that answers the appeal one. The second clash about this debate is the whole issue of identity versus autonomy. Because Propo is valuing this whole thing of autonomy, want them to have the choice. Okay, yes, they have the choice. But if this choice directly harms them, then we still have the authority or we still have the burden to revoke this because we believe that it's an inherent harm to one, people's self-actualization, but two, the ability of people to actually benefit from this whole kind of system where they are working. The three things that they brought about in this whole kind of clash. I mean, protected time, thank you very much. The whole kind of thing that they brought about in this debate is one, on their side, the impact of their side is that one, you strip people of their whole dignity. Secondly, there's lack of self-actualization because what makes them is taken away. But thirdly, even the buyers, they then lose part of themselves. Why this thing is particularly important is that even those people who are buying your emotions of happiness, the mere fact that the emotions which are theirs, which they have bought are not theirs, it means that they are never fully going to self-actualize because they are not experiencing or living their very own emotions, but emotions bought of another person and another person's experiences. What that means is that on the whole issue of autonomy, even though we give them your choice, we still value someone's identity because one, it makes you who you are, two, it makes you self-actualize, but three, inability to have that issue or inability to have that identity makes you lose a part of you. What that means is that on prop side, we have a whole world whereby people are not able to live who their true selves are, but they are living a world in which there's a consistent cycle of poverty, of where people are not able to self-actualize with happiness, and happiness is actually structured a small group of classified rich people. We are incredibly proud to oppose because the side proposition is a selfish group of people.
Hi. Hello. Hello.
I think you're audible from my side. I don't know, Chair.
I audible to the chair. I don't know if the chair is hearing because the chair is not responding. So should I just begin? Okay. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. The only sense that we get from Henry's speech is to do with escapism. That is to say, individuals get a chance to say emotions. But this is already taken out of this debate through the utility principle. Notice that this principle does two things in this debate. Firstly, it is self-contradictory to their case. Notice that the fact that individuals want to maximize happiness over pain, they're less likely going to buy bad emotions. At a point in time where this is necessarily true, it then means that we don't get any sort of impacts like people committing suicide or whatnot on our side of the house. Secondly, we tell you that the idea on burdens, we have two responses. Firstly, we think that the nature of this debate is that this debate is on moral grounds. That is to say, we have to assess it on the grounds of whether it's principally justified to carry out this act on top of utility. But also, secondly, we think that there are two arguments, like the argument of choice and the argument of utility, are then contingent not on practical outcomes, but they are rather on moral grounds. The fact that these arguments then stand in this debate, or the fact that these arguments are still pushed in this debate by their side of the house, then necessarily means that our moral arguments still stand within this particular debate. Thirdly, we think that their principle of choice is premised on two major things. Firstly, if individuals are making rational decisions, but also secondly, if individuals are not being coerced into particular decisions. We tell you from first speech how, in the first instance, the fact that there is an over glorification of money in society as something that is good, the poor are necessarily coerced to trade their good emotions in order to attain this sort of money and in order to fit in within society. At a point in time where then it's true, we think choice is something that is then justified to be taken away from society because it is something that is then coerced to actually happen. But also, secondly, we think that at a point in time where choice is then going to be harmful to different individuals in society, that is to say, you then take away this individual's dignity, and then you spoil this, you make it hard for these individuals to then self-actualize in society as their side will house then fronts. We think it then becomes justified to take away choice. We then think our side then stand in this debate. But by this time, the only exclusive thing that you then necessarily get from side proposition is that they are then willing to sell off human dignity for the profit of society. We then think it then becomes very bad within this debate. But also, secondly, on their second idea on how you give individuals the opportunity to actually be good in society and the opportunity to get money. We tell you 4 particular things from the start of this debate which are not tackled. Firstly, we tell you that the whole idea of happiness is then, the whole idea of like these emotions that are being sold is then standardized. The fact this then essentially means that only those who have good emotions are then going to be bought from because individuals want to then maximize pleasure. At this particular instance, the people who then have bad emotions then lack out of society because no one is going to buy their bad emotions because each and every individual then wants good emotion. But at a point in time where then these emotions are not cannot then stay in society for a long time and they are not like renewable at every particular instance, we then think it then creates an monopoly in society where the rich people are the only ones who are then going to benefit in society from these emotions. We think at that point then it monetizes the whole idea of emotions. Then the poor people then fall out and the poor people cannot necessarily buy these emotions. But also finally, right, we think that the whole idea of the utility principle then existing in this debate takes away the whole idea that they try to front, which is selling emotions, which then means that their side doesn't stand in this debate. What do we tell you from side proposition? We tell you 2 particular things. We tell you how their cyber house then degrades people's identity because you then sell away the only thing that then makes those individuals humans, or secondly, you then sell away the only thing that actually instigates the different choices that we make as humanity. At a point in time where that is true, it then degrades their dignity and it prevents individuals from actually self-actualizing or from actually being who they are within society. It then becomes something that is wrong on moral stance. But also too, we tell you the fact that not each and every individual is then going to benefit from like these emotions because some people are not going to be able to buy these emotions or some people won't be able to sell their emotions. That then becomes something that is harmful to this debate. By the end of this debate, we all have to understand that the only thing that side proposition then does is to instigate harm on 2 different individuals within society who are poor and want to gain money from the selling of emotions. I rest my case.
Okay, someone just indicating.
Green, check DM.
Oh yeah, sure. I've done so. Oh yeah, sure. Am I audible? Just indicate in the chat.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
beautiful. So if I'm audible, just start my timer. No wahala. So my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the biggest question here within this debate was who gets to buy and compensate negative experiences that individuals necessarily go through. The context within this debate was quite clear on why there's an active government enslavement for a lot of individuals, likely minorities who live within things like poverty anyways. What our model definitely does is that you create an active incentive or opportunity for these individuals to necessarily come out of those particular sort of situations. I think I'm going to go way quite simply in engaging this particular debate. I think Reimer's only problem within this specific debate would be like you would sell these specific emotions, but the only biggest problem shared was, oh, human beings aren't necessarily rational. We don't necessarily think this is definitely true anyways, for a couple of reasons. One, the idea of social acceptancy. That is to say, people likely cooperate in social groups anyway. What that means is that they are required to consider the needs and perspectives of other individuals. It much more likely means before people likely do specific actions, they're likely evaluative of how those particular things likely have an effect on other individuals. We say people have cognitive capacity. We don't necessarily think people are inherently stupid anyways. We think at a point in time that they definitely sell it. They definitely think these particular things are inherently worth enough anyways for what they're necessarily kind of selling. I think that's just generally because you care about making people happier and because because it has things like economic value. So you actively do something that you love that inherently still benefit you kind of like benefit from. But also we say evolutionary sort of like perspective. That is to say the ability that you make a logical decision to sell, it means that you've considered the innate benefits that are likely going to come out of these particular things. We think that necessarily explains why economists likely may not sell specific commodities even at a ways. It means at a point in time there is a marginal benefit individuals get from these particular things. It doesn't care how much money they're necessarily getting. At a point in time that is necessarily more better to them in terms of leveraging them to such harmful sort of emotions. We think that's still better them. We don't necessarily think coercive to that. Anyways, the entire idea in opposition is to say, oh, you get to lose what necessarily makes you human in and of itself. That is to say that you kind of like sell. I think this is like a big assumption, is that, oh, those emotions, so you don't have capacity over them. The issue is you remain with those significant emotions. It's only that in this particular aspect of the debate, you have emotional value that you get out of those specific emotions you've inherently explained. It means, therefore, in the vast majority of instances, you're actually able to find a more meaningful life. You save the poor individual's rhyme is likely talking about within her specific. Because see, there are definitely poor simply because the particular sort of structure harm these particular individuals, getting things like economic prowess or economic benefits at the end of the day. What our side does is that you're able to get some level of monetary value or monetary worth. It means you likely break specific shackles of things like income inequality that exist within most of these particular sort of structures. But we say it becomes better anyways. At a point in time that you become a motivation for those who have things like shared oppression, it much more likely means that there's still individuals within the scope who are likely going to consume specific emotions. Because James's entire case within this debate is that, oh, people are likely going to pick good emotions over bad emotions anyways. What we say that all specific emotions are definitely good anyways. People make movies, they figure things like sad music and all that thing. The idea here is that people are able to relate with things that they're likely going through. So at a point in time that you share specific life experiences with a large portion of individuals, you much more likely stop specific things that they would likely, or extreme actions that they would likely take anyways. When people are likely going to commit things like suicide anyways, they have like an active incentive not to do so because they think someone necessarily within the same situation they necessarily lived in necessarily still exists anyways. Our side is much more better anyways. The impact on our side was like crucially very important, that you provide a big bandwidth for these individuals to take more meaningful decisions at that particular extent. You provide them with more variable information that they definitely need. What we push for is the diversity for those experiences, that you embrace that diversity anyways. You necessarily buy specific emotions to make your life experiences more authentic anyways. I significantly still, and this is why Rahim's extension was necessarily the most important extension within this round. He says there's already an active incentive within status quo anyways for AI industries necessarily to simulate life experiences or what likely individuals are inherently consuming. Our side is necessarily better, is that you still provide those same things anyways to these particular companies, but through life experiences where individuals get to sell these particular things. We say it's principally okay for you to sell things that you didn't necessarily invest in to accrue within the very first instance, on principle to benefit other individuals who don't have that same kind of thing. I think this is why necessarily people kind of go for things like marriage anniversaries, simply because there is like an addiction, an ability for you to go through the same life experiences that you kind of like miss anyways.
All right, that marks the end of the debate. The, considering that this is a debate that I'm supposed to judge, give me some few minutes to return with my final call.
who we are. We are the dreamers. We make it happen. 'Cause we can see it. It's through the ones that keep the passion. Respect. Oh yeah. It's through the ones that can't imagine. Respect. Oh yeah. Gather round now, look at me. Respect and love the only way. If you wanna come with me. The door is open every day. This 1+2 rendezvous, all invited. This what we do, how we do. Look who we are. We are the dreamers. We make it happen. Guess we believe it. Look who we are. We are the dreamers. We make it happen. 'Cause we can see it. It's through the ones that keep the passion. Respect. Oh yeah. It's through the ones that can't imagine. Respect. Oh yeah.
Baby, travailler, make you know they shall like it. I don't want nobody to keep my matter killing. For this life I day, I want to be celebrated. Don't wanna waste my days, I want to spend them on enjoyment. Listen to what time is you? Money, every day party. As I did not to get to start to the move, if you smoke a like just they bounce with the groove. Look at you do. If you lose God, then go bounce with your boo. I can vouch from the group. I'm telling you, and do they do lifestyle of a group, make you dance to the loop, then go the loop, then go the loop. And say if it's not enough, if I do 99 goody goody, then what? Don't know how to show you my love without fucking up. But I can buy you a new baby if I made you laugh. Baby, travailler, make you know they shall like it. I don't want nobody to keep my matter like. For this life I day, I want to be celebrated. Don't wanna waste my days, I want to spend them on enjoyment. It's been too
I'm so lonely, hold me tightly. Daddy think we're morning, really love me true. Even up so I can't wait till I meet you. And I know I'm the you want. Love is right, I'm a human, love is right. It's not a job, so yeah, but you're right now. No more chance to you. You know, hey, the don't boy.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Lovely to see you all here tonight. We are having a very entertaining night, are we not, with some very interesting things being said from the other side of the house tonight. Let me begin by saying, as a Muslim, as a representative of Islam, I would consider myself an ambassador for Islam, a believer in Islam, a follower of Islam and its Prophet. So, in that capacity, let me begin by apologising to Anne-Marie for the Bali bombings. I apologise for the role of my religion and me and my people, for the killing of Theo van Gogh, for 7/7. Yes, that was all of us. That was Islam, that was Muslims, that was the Quran. I mean, astonishing claims to make in the very first speech tonight, on a day like today, where the Conservative Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is having to come out and point out that these kind of views are anathema. And I believe you're trying to stand for the Labour Party to become an MP in Brighton. If you do, and you make these comments, I'm guessing you'll have the whip.
All right. I hope I'm audible now. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Right, cool. So, how my OA is going to be. One, I'm not going to talk about what you guys should do. I think this is a master's round, and everybody on call has been able to see ideally what we expect to see in the master's round, right? I'm just going to go straight into material, and I'll be able to justify why right? On to a few that I think you need to note. One, perspective is always going to be looking at end of the more from looking that I've done as an adjudicator, I've been able to address and understand that yes, everything was in order. So I'll start with the first affirmative, which is rain. Here's what we necessarily get from Rain's case and what I went ahead to consider when I was going ahead to judge. First is a few things. He's able to talk about how systems that have been put in place do not really guarantee any form of self-actualization to individuals, right? And in this case, you're able to understand how, in one way or another, people want to make a better living and how people have the choice to choose what to sell and when not to sell it. So emotions in most cases become some form of identity spectrum, but still a person has an opportunity to choose to sell it, right? Second and foremost is that one, it talks about how there's going to be some form of economic opportunities, and they are able to talk about how there's some form of curtailment system, right? In form of maybe say an age structure that would actually prevent individuals from going ahead to sell emotions if they need to be protected. Still, he's able to, there's no form of dehumanization because there's more choice and how people have the alternative choice to actually go ahead and pick, right? More importantly, what we get from it is he's able to talk about the acts that come from their side and how they are very important. They're able to talk about like, individual autonomy, necessarily get the mindset. The mind of the first speaker position is able to come out and talk about how in most cases emotions are and their form of identifications, right? They're able to going to go ahead and perform. So it means that in most cases the individual is based upon their emotions, also an emotion for money is one a case on the moral aspect of it. Second, of course, is that she's still able to talk about how it did and everything like that. Now, the debate starts sparking from here because when they talk about how it degrades an individual, notice that Rin has been able to actually identify a scope of choice, right? So it means that you're not necessarily degrading, but you're encouraging a person to choose if they want to do it or not. But second and foremost, he has been able to set up a debate and say that, you see, we might also have some form of protective mechanisms that guarantee that individuals are protected in the long run. Secondly, is when she comes out and tells us that, you see, in most cases, only full good emotions are actually sold. It now comes down to the second speaker's speech of affirmative, where we're able to understand that, you see, in most cases, we don't only see good emotions, but also bad emotions can be sold. And when they are sold, they can actually be monetized to develop an individual and everything they do to that. Still, from the second speaker's speech, you're able to understand how rights are important. They talk about how identities, in most cases, still don't really encourage people to be a good example. In most cases, they look at how experiences are going to be formed, and then he runs this case on the utility side of it. Now, at that point, you notice that the affirmative is already high end in the opposition's case. It shows that the affirmative are able to talk about one, the utility that comes out of it, two, their mechanism on choice still runs ahead, and then more importantly, commodification is still heavily mechanized, which was something that we felt was very, very interesting, right? More importantly is that they talk about why buying bad emotions actually is something good. So it actually changes the whole retrospect of the debate and shows how this was very important. At that point, the affirmative is already in lead. What now necessarily changes? A few things. Second, opposition comes and redresses the debate and shows a different perspective of it, right? One, they talk about how in most cases the world is really harmful and breaking the cycle will be very difficult. Why? Because they're able to show you other different stakeholders. They talk about the rich and how the rich will only be able to purchase more, purchase the feel good emotions, if you may take it. And then in most cases, they're still able to talk about how, in one way or another, opportunities in form of slavery will be able to come up because people are going to be hell bent on selling an emotions, and there'll be more of slaves in something similar to that. Notice that this changes the whole perspective and shows that even when you choose to sell your emotions, even when you choose to commodify it, at the end of the day, you're going to be a slave. But number two, it means that you're going to be encouraging people to suffer. At that point, the debate now changes and looks at the perspective of should people be justified to actually suffer in order to make some form of money? But also, it now creates a form of redress to the first speaker's case of people being morally wrong for going ahead to commodify their emotions, or if you may take it. More importantly, is that from their side, you're able to understand that the struggle is going to continue. Why? Because the poor are always going to be left out. Why does now the whole debate shift? The whole debate shifts onto the content of why we are able to look at it. And still, the third speaker from opposition is able to talk about a few things that run through the debate and re-echo them. One is that in most cases, they talk about how humans are going to be actually taken advantage of. It means that humanity in forms of emotions and everything they advocate for will not be considered. At that point in line, it shows a few things. One, if you go ahead and commodify emotions, then morally it will be wrong. But second and foremost, they're able to talk about how the cycle will never be broken and how the poor wouldn't really be taken into consideration. With those few cases, it felt like it was hell bent on the affirmative, and the affirmative was unable to actually come in line and prove with that. With that, we have a position ranking of affirmative. With that, I rest my case. If you have any questions, inbox me, but it's a master's around. I don't think you will inbox me. Good night, guys. I'm out of here. Something to say. Oh, it's a master's round, so everybody was good. Everybody was a fantastic. This is why the debate just came down to something very, very small and minute, just why the opposition would win. But once again, we have opposition ranking over affirmative. Children debating, winning. Very interesting. All right, I'm done. Rin, what else is there to be said? Rin. Okay. Yeah, Rin. I might have to go.
Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah, I thank you, Peter, for moderating this session as well as for the OA. So I think most of the things will run them tomorrow again. We're gonna share the schedule. So definitely around tomorrow. I think that around tonight. For tomorrow we'll be likely having round one will be spider and then time for check-in will as well be communicated much more likely. This is like an optional. If you don't like